Hello, everyone. I'm Charles, and we're back again for another year of talking about the Oscars. This year, I decided I wanted to be a little bit more low key. I've realized that in the past, when I've done like all the research on it, and came up with who won the BAFTA and who won the Golden Globe and the Directors Guild, and all that stuff. I mean, it somewhat takes the fun out of it. It makes predicting it a little easier, but honestly, I don't know how you feel about this, Nathan. And Nathan is my guest this particular podcast. He's been, I think you've done it with me. Have you done it once or twice now with me for the
Uh,
Oscars?
yeah, just once.
Okay. Well, so I decided this year that I wanted to just more talk about how we felt and
Okay.
try to just say what we think about the movies. And we're just going to talk about the 10 Best Picture nominees. And I'm really excited because there's actually 10. There's not always 10 in this category, even though they can choose 10. And I always think that's an insult to the ones they don't pick. But we're going to talk about the 10. Nathan has not seen all of them yet. He's still working on it.
No,
I have seen
yeah.
all 10. In fact, I'm just finished the 10th one. I just finished Past Lives. Um, but we're going to go very quickly on this. So it may not help you win as much because, again, we're not doing all the research. But I was going to say that I think there's too many award shows now. Is it just me?
No, it's a lot.
It kind of takes the prestige out of the Oscars when they're the last in the kind of award season. Because
Yeah.
you've got the SAG awards, which are feeding heavily into this year because for the best actress, especially from what I'm reading, it's a big toss up between Emma Stone and Lily Gladstone. Is that
Yeah.
yeah? So anyway, let's uh I will just off the top of this before we start. We're gonna go down each of the 10 and just kind of briefly talk about them. But off the top, out of the you've seen 6 of the 10, Nathan.
Yes.
Out of the six you've seen, which is your favorite?
Oh, just my personal favorite.
Yeah.
Well, I think this might sound weird, but I loved Barbie. When I think of the year 2023, it'll be Barbie. I think it's the movie that probably people will be talking about most in the coming years. Totally understand why I don't think it will win Best Picture. So that's the most memorable. But out of the other ones on the list, I'll talk about more. But I was pretty high on the holdovers.
Really? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And it's funny to talk about Barbie because it's Barbenheimer really because of the year, the
Right.
weird year we're in. But there's the whole thing about how people were complaining that it didn't get the Greta Gerwig didn't get nominated for Best Director.
Mhm.
Margot Robbie didn't get nominated for actress, and I kind of hate that because that fails to take into account that they each still did get nominated for Oscars. Margot Robbie produced Barbie, so
Right.
she's nominated. Greta Gerwig is nominated in Best Screenplay, but they wouldn't let her do original screenplay. That's kind of a weird thing too. So it had to be adapted,
Yeah.
even though there's no Barbie movie and it was original. So but yeah, that kind of takes away, America Ferrera is also nominated. So it's not like women weren't nominated or respected. But
Right.
the movie, I've, we talked about this before. Barbie, I feel like, wasn't just like what people expected. It wasn't a cheesy kids movie, and at the other end of the spectrum, it wasn't really this like feminist anti-man movie either. So
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. But okay, we're gonna start with we're gonna go alphabetically, and we're gonna start with two that Nathan has not seen, just because that's how we do things. We're gonna start with American Fiction,
Yeah.
and I recently saw this one. It's a comedy, and as my wife will say, not many of the Oscars are comedies. They're usually depressing and dark and weird and downbeat movies. This is a pretty funny movie. It's a satirical look at Hollywood in the fact that a black author, his books aren't really selling well in it. And out of being sarcastic and just kind of sick of the whole system, he writes a book that is very stereotypical of African American men, and like he just writes like to the lowest common denominator, writes the most stereotypical book he can about them, and he hates it. He sees it as a joke, but that ends up being the book that everybody wants. It ends up making him a ton of money. But it's also more than just that. It feeds into the culture because it's all the white people are going to be publishing, promoting the book. They're all thinking it's like a real experience, like it's coming from a real person, a real black man, and all these things. So they're feeding into it, and he feels guilty because he's making money off of doing that. The question in the movie is like, what image of these different groups is being portrayed, and thus which ones become the most dominant view of them? Is it harming his culture? And is it okay to take money from that? Like I said, it's probably out of these, it's probably the funniest, one of the funniest movies. But yeah, I just did Sterling K. Brown's character. I just expected, I guess I expected more of. But Jeffrey Wright is really great in it. So I liked it, but it's definitely, out of these, it's definitely not my favorite, but it was good to see a comedy.
Right.
I expect that this could win screenplay, as the screenplay was really clever.
Yeah.
I thought. I don't know. I think it's based on a book, so I'm assuming this is under Best Adapted Screenplay, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Yes, that's correct.
so I expect
Yeah,
this
that's
one.
correct.
I expect this one will win that. But yeah, I do not. I don't think Sterling K. Brown will win. Anyway, okay, let's move on to the next one, which is I believe Anatomy of a Fall.
Yes. Sorry. Once again, another one I haven't
Right.
seen.
As I say, the
Charles
first
is
two off the
wondering.
bat.
Yeah, Charles is wondering why he invited me on to this
No,
thing.
not at all, not at all, not at all. When we get to the ones, it'll be a good discussion. So, Anatomy of a Fall, I had read nothing about. I really liked it as well. It's about a man who falls out of like the third floor of his house, and so the whole thing is about, did his wife push him, or was he so depressed that it was a suicide? And it's about the courtroom drama, and it's in France. And so what was really interesting to me is, I guess I don't really know much about France's legal system. I was under the impression that we borrowed a lot of their court system and a lot from the UK as
Mhm.
well. But it seems like theirs is I don't know, I was gonna say completely different, but theirs is certainly different from ours. And for one, it doesn't. Are there no juries in France?
I
Um,
don't know.
it's because basically what it is. It's basically like two lawyers, kind of almost they're like stage play, almost like they're giving their sides of the case and talking and trying to make good points to like the crowd, like to the people in attendance for the trial. Um, and it's a court drama, and it's just very interesting. But it's about relationships and how you say hurtful things and taken out of context that could, sound like you were really going to kill someone, or you say something else and it could sound like you were really going to commit suicide. And so it's all these things out of context,
Hmm.
removed from that. What do they mean? And in a lot of ways, it's about culture, and it's about giving up certain parts of your life and compromising. And there's a lot of things at stake in it. And I thought it was interesting. Not my favorite, but I liked it. I don't think she'll win. I don't actually predict this winning. I can't remember the categories it is, but
Yeah.
I don't think it'll win Best Picture regardless, and I don't think she'll win Best Actress. Okay, so let's move on. We're gonna go to Barbie. We both have said our opinion on this movie. I loved Barbie. I I man, it's hard because it was one of my favorites of the year as well.
Right.
Um, it would be awesome if it won. I don't think it will win.
No.
Um, it's unfortunate, but uh, I would love for Ryan Gosling to win, but I don't think he will either. I'm not
No.
sure out of all these. I'm not sure what it would take home. What
I
do you think?
I think maybe possibly a production design. Maybe I feel like it'll win at least one of those subcategories, and that will be kind of But to me, even though I know, like you mentioned, like Greta Gerwig kind of getting quote unquote snubbed and that sort of thing, I think the fact that Barbie is just even in the contention of Best Picture is a pretty well received recognition.
For
So for the
sure.
type of movie it's aiming to be.
I love the "I'm Just Ken" song. And that would be cool if that won too, or if somehow was able to win. But I know
Yeah,
that Billie Eilish is probably the front runner on that.
yeah,
But I do know that Ryan Gosling's going to sing the "I'm Just Ken" song there,
yeah.
and
That'll be fun.
it's got like a bunch of backup dancers. So I guess they're going to recreate kind of how it was in the movie. And did you know that Slash does the guitar for that song?
Oh no, that's amazing.
It is. It's like if you go back and if you watch
Of course he did.
right but if you go back and watch the not the scene from the movie, but they have like an official video that's like got a lot of the making of it in there mixed in,
Oh, okay.
and they show like Slash in it, and it's like,
Oh,
and that's how I was like, oh gosh, Slash is awesome. So
yeah, that's
it's
fun.
it's the part where it speeds up and goes fast. They got a heavy guitar riff where
Hmm.
they switch keys, like it's like three different
Yeah.
songs in one when they
Yeah,
do that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, I loved Barbie. I really I consider Barbie to be an original screenplay. Like I wish they could both win, but if they're in the same category, I think American Fiction's going to beat Barbie.
Hmm.
Even though Barbie was fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the Holdovers, which you said was one of your favorites outside of Barbie. Um,
Y- Yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
I just kind of this, definitely has an ode to 70s films. It's not even trying to hide the fact, but it's a deep character story of these three different people, very different people, but all all are struggling with similar issues. And I think what I just loved most about it was that in a short time frame, they go through big character changes, but I felt like it was all very justified. Where in a lot of movies, you're like, did that person really change all that much? And so I just thought the journey that these three characters take just were both like realistic, but also the movie, it just leaves you with a good feeling. But the people aren't like perfect all of a sudden. They're just still going to have their issues, but this is definitely a moment in time that will define them going forward. And I just this type of movie, the tone, drama slash comedy, it's just my type of movie. Just kind of had a real big auteur type of feel to it, and yeah, I loved it.
I liked it as well. And it's another comedy, um, not as comedic as like American Fiction, not trying to be.
Right? Yeah,
And of course,
yeah,
I like Paul Giamatti and Alexander Payne. I think they're always great when they're together. I read something. I kept looking at like Paul Giamatti's eyes in The Holdover because they talk about that a lot,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and it made me to the point where I was like, does Paul Giamatti have eyes like that for real? Like I couldn't remember,
yeah.
and then I started thinking about his past. I was like, does he have that? So but it's not, and apparently it's like a big deal on how they did it. They're Alexander Payne and Paul Giamatti are kind of secretive about how they achieve that effect.
Okay,
It's not real,
yeah,
but it's not CG. So I'm guessing they use some type of like contact lens or something
yeah,
to do that. I don't know why that stuck out with me, but it
yeah,
stuck out with me so much that it was like making me question it. So that's why I went and researched it. And like again,
yeah,
they haven't really directly answered it,
yeah,
how
yeah,
they achieved it.
yeah,
But anyway, so I did really like the script for that though, and I
yeah.
liked the way it was shot, the '70s style. In fact, they uh, it very realistically captured that.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I read that it was shot digitally, that they had to make it look like that, which kind of surprised
Oh,
me. I would
it
have
does
assumed that they
that
would have shot
surprises
on,
me.
would assume they shot on the film and tried to you know replicate that, but they did it digitally. Okay, so the next one is Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
Um, what did you think?
Well, I loved this movie. I thought it was very good. I thought considering the source material, how Scorsese decided to frame it, I will say, living here in Oklahoma, it's hard, you kind of almost can't help but get a little bit more personally attached to it. But yes, it has a long runtime. I've said like I loved Oppenheimer. I felt the time in that with the Killers of the Flower Moon. I didn't like. I just thought everything existed for a reason. It moved. I thought it just really just portrayed an important part of our history.
This was one of the ones I'm kind of conflicted on. They changed so much of it. I'd heard about
Yeah, they do.
DiCaprio coming in and decided to rewrite the character, and I thought they were going to make it more about the Osage people from their perspective. And really, the way I saw it is they made the DiCaprio character, they made it more central to him.
Hmm.
Also, I was disappointed that they decided, I don't know why they decided to do that kind of thing at the end where it was like a 1920s like show, like a radio show. I don't know why they did that because they basically showed none of the courtroom drama, none of that. They just summarized it. And it's like when you're talking about a movie that's over 3 hours and you're summarizing huge parts of the original story, that kind of, I didn't like that as much.
Yeah, I think we could really spend a lot of time dissecting it. Because I will say at the end, the ending did kind of like made me pause a little bit, but I think that was his attention at that there are these huge moments of history that essentially get swept under the rug. Like I can't tell you how many Oklahomans that I've talked to here who were born and raised here that were like, yeah, we were never taught this story at all. And I think that radio show is almost kind of a stand-in of like how quick, not just this story, but all sorts of stories in history of how it's like we sum it up in like 2 minutes with like little, sound effects. And then this happened. Can you believe this? And then we go on. And I think it's almost intentionally there. And then the last shot, goes away from that. And it's just this zoom up of the Osage tribe doing one of their tribal dances. And I think that's bringing us back to the fact of that these were real people, that affected this change. So that's how I interpreted it.
Okay, so next one is Maestro.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't love this movie. This is
Yeah.
one that felt really slow to me, and it wasn't even that long of a movie.
Yeah.
The problem I had is that I didn't walk away like feeling that I knew much about the man because the movie doesn't.
Yeah.
I was talking to my wife about it, and the movie is really just like random scenes in his life throughout the years is the best way
Yeah.
I can say it. It's
Yeah.
not. Sometimes I was watching a scene, I'm like, well, why are we even being shown this? Like, what is this? How is this pushing the story forward? How is it expanding his character?
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt that way or not. Like, it
Yeah.
didn't seem like they showed like what made him so great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think I probably liked this movie more than like other people. And then when I started kind of hearing other people's thoughts, like I totally understand the perspective. I mean, this is a movie, yeah, it more so focuses on his relationship with his wife than with the man itself. And I do agree there could have been a better balance there. I enjoyed it in the sense that, like, man, it's just Bradley Cooper is just going for it. And
Yes.
so there's I thought there were a lot of like masterful scenes in it that like I will remember. Like I particularly remember there's a scene where he's talking to his daughter and flat out lies to her, but it's a really like heavy scene because it sits with him and all this kind of stuff. But then you have another scene where he's conducting I don't know the name of the score, but I mean, it is just like triumphant and the camera's moving around and he can, and that's really cool. But I think the problem with this movie is like, there's all these like great scenes, but they don't have the same style or flow to them. And so it's like, it's almost like Bradley Cooper's like, and I want to try this and I want to try this and I want to try this. And then I'm going to star in it. And so it does feel like, if it was like reined in, I think it could have been a great movie. But I saw that I really appreciated the cool things that it was doing.
When they showed like the real clips of him at the end during the credits, it's like, well, you could really see that. I mean, Bradley Cooper mastered that, the expressions, everything.
Mhm.
So, again, yes, it's just I still feel a little bit disconnected from it, but I appreciate the artistic
Yeah,
endeavor and all the challenges that went into it. So,
yeah,
I definitely wasn't my favorite. I don't see it
right.
winning anything, unfortunately,
No,
for
yeah,
Bradley Cooper. But anyway, okay, so let's move on to Oppenheimer. Um, I I feel like this is going to be the one to win Best Picture.
yeah, for sure.
Um, I also feel like Christopher Nolan's probably finally going to get an Oscar
Yep,
for director.
for for sure.
We talked about Killian's going to win Best Actor. I think we're thinking the same thing that Robert Downey Jr. is going to win Supporting
Hmm.
Actor.
Yep.
Yeah, I see this winning a ton of awards. I liked it, and like I said, I read the book after the movie, and I think
Oh,
that's helped me appreciate it a lot more. Because it's like when I first saw the movie, I knew very little about Oppenheimer. I roughly knew the story, but it was hard to kind of keep up with the style of the movie because it's the whole thing that Christopher Nolan is kind of famous for messing with time and going back and forth and playing around with it in different editing styles, kind of like what he did in Dunkirk, and I mean all his movies do that to an extent, and so that was hard at first. But when I read the book, I feel like I understand the characters a little more because
mhm.
sometimes this movie will switch back and forth decades it's in the same scene to show
Yeah,
you the emotional connection and the I liked it. I don't know that it's my favorite of the year, but I think it will win Best Picture
yeah,
and probably cinematography.
yeah,
It was shot in these very specific formats. Like Kodak had to invent an IMAX black and white film.
yeah.
So they invented stuff for this movie, and I just don't know. I don't know that it needed it. Like
Right. Yeah.
it's like yes, it's a good looking film, but are we picking for cinematography because of these things it invented, or because it actually like used the camera in really interesting ways? I don't know. That's kind of a hard one. I do think this will win that though, just because of all the talk that's been about how it looks and the IMAX
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
that stuff.
yeah. Definitely enough for cinematography, production design. I think it's got yeah, sound. Um, not visual effects, but
That
yeah.
surprised.
So
That actually surprised me because that was another thing they mentioned
yeah,
about
yeah,
how it didn't use like a lot of heavy CG to do the things.
yeah, yeah.
But
Film
yeah,
editing. Yeah. Not my personal favorite, but for it, like it's going to win the things that it's going to win. Like I don't at all like fault it, like at all. Like
yeah,
you know what I mean? So
yeah.
yeah,
No, it's a good movie. I did feel
yeah,
the pacing on this one. It did feel a little slower and all that, but it's extremely well done. Um,
yeah.
so that'll be and you know Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors, and it'll also be if Downey Jr. wins, that'll be cool. Like you know
Yeah.
this whole career comeback thing he's had since Iron Man.
Yeah.
That'll be really cool.
Yeah.
Um, all right, let's move on to Past Lives, which is the one
Yeah.
that I just finished.
Just finished.
I really,
So
really like this movie.
yeah. Yeah.
But I will say, I uh, I had to go back and check this afterwards because I was expecting some big twist. In the beginning, they show
Oh.
like the first scene is they show like the people in the bar and they're wondering
Oh yeah. Yeah.
how
Yeah.
the people
Yeah.
yeah it flashes back and it says 24 years earlier. Well, when I was first watching it, I thought it said 24 hours earlier. And
Oh.
so the whole movie I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, so there's kids and then there's a part on the subway where they like the main character like leaves and they focus on this older man on the subway. And I kept thinking there was going to be some time travel thing to this. I really did. I was like, oh, that old man's going to be him from the future. So I was expecting this twist and then like it's not.
No.
And that's okay. I had to go back and I rewatched parts of it. It was like 24 years earlier. And I was like, okay, that's different. I did really like it though. In a lot of ways, it reminded me about everything everywhere all at once and how you have different lives and different choices you make along the
Hmm.
way and how they will extremely affect that. Like in this one, you know, her family leaves Korea when she's 12 and so it changes her whole life because she was in love with her friend there at the time and she'd already talked about marrying him, you know, even at 12.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. It's a movie that will stick with you and just kind of make you kind of think about some things because I don't think it's necessarily a relationship. It might have been like you know, a job prospect that you thought you had or turned down or something. Everybody, I think, has that moment where they go back, like, what if I had made that like that choice or that decision? And so I really liked the themes that it explored. I like that comparison to everything everywhere all at once because it's two completely vibes and two different types of paces, but it's touching on the same things. And so I've jokingly said I really like this movie a lot. I told my wife Whitney, I think you'd really like this movie, but you will not be able to watch it if you're tired at all. It's a quiet, it's a soft, you know, it's a quiet
Unless you
movie.
think it's a time travel movie and you're trying to figure
Right.
out the plot and how the twist is going to
Well,
happen.
it's funny because they do talk about these they have a Korean saying about, you know, these past lives. So it does kind of almost like touch on not supernatural. So
It does.
I can totally see like how you were starting to read into that.
Another movie it reminded me of is Castaway, and
Oh,
how
okay.
when
Yeah.
Tom Hanks comes back to Helen Hunt at the end of that movie, and
Hmm.
she's got a
Yeah.
whole life that
The whole new life. Yeah.
it's the same thing, and you're like
Yeah.
you know they still love each other, and it's like
Hmm.
oh what's gonna happen? So that
Yeah.
was definitely I thought of that too, but all
Yeah.
right. So Poor Things, which you said you haven't seen. Actually, we're going to
No.
end with we begin and end with two that you haven't seen.
I know. I know.
I absolutely love this movie. I love this movie. It is a lot though, and it
Yeah.
is definitely it's a dark comedy, and it's bizarre, and it's out there, and it's kind of a combination of Frankenstein and Big, if you
Yeah.
can picture that. I suspect that a lot of people would find this movie extremely off-putting and not like it at all. So it's one of those. It's like it's hard for me to recommend. to certain
Yeah.
to people,
Right, right,
especially
right.
certain
Yeah.
people. But
He is not for everybody. And I always tell people that about his movies. You have to, yeah, but yeah, I'm really excited because I've heard great things about this one.
and
So yeah.
visually, it is stunning. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, this would be the one that would win a ton of stuff. But I do think there is a strong chance this could win production design and all that
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
it's good, and I really like the music too. Anyway, so let's see. So the last one, which we said you haven't seen either,
The Zone of
The
Interest. Yeah.
Zone of Interest. I'm very mixed about this movie as well.
I've
For
heard
those,
it's, yeah, I
uh,
heard it's tough.
it's a true story of this German family. Presumably they're Nazis. The dad definitely is, and he's one of the leaders of Auschwitz concentration camp. The family literally has a house on the residence on the campsite that's like literally has a border wall with Auschwitz. That whole area around it is called the Zone of Interest. Apparently, that's what the Nazis called it. The entire movie takes place in their house, and it's showing you their very mundane life and
Yeah.
how they're able to just ignore all that. There's literally gunfire happening all the time, screams happening all the time, fire burning, but it's really just about their very average, boring lives with Auschwitz as the kind of context, the elephant in the room, so to speak. But that makes the movie incredibly slow. I do get that's the point of it, but it almost makes it inaccessible. It's like this very deliberate pace
Yeah.
um, to make a point, but it's one of those hard things.
Yeah.
So let's just recap this all then real quick. So I think we're pretty much in agreement on all this. We both
Yeah.
think Oppenheimer's going to win Best Picture.
Yeah.
We think that Christopher Nolan's going to win Best Director.
Correct.
We think that Cillian Murphy's going to win Best Actor.
Yes.
We think that Lily Gladstone's going to win Best Actress.
I think so.
Um, what is it? Did I do what I do? Oh, supporting. Supporting actor Robert Downey Jr.
Yes.
Supporting actress.
Uh, that's,
Did we even talk about
yeah,
that?
we didn't, but yeah, I think it's going to be Divine Joy Randolph from the Holdover. She's won everything else this year,
Really?
so
Yeah, that's right. And she was really good in the holdovers too. She
yeah,
was kind of she was definitely one of the more interesting characters
yeah,
and her relationship with Paul Giamatti's character was really interesting too.
yeah,
Um yeah. Okay. I think we're
yeah,
pretty solid on those.
yeah.
Now, as far as our personal choices, you would have picked the holdover for best picture.
Well,
Who would you or maybe oh go ahead.
uh, that's like, I do a star rating. Ultimately, when I look at this list, like Barbie and the Holdovers were like 5 stars for me. And as
Okay.
far as like best picture, I lean towards the Holdovers, but I would never make the argument necessarily that it's more of that's a personal like pick for me.
Poor Things would probably be my top choice.
Yeah.
Who do you think for director then? Would you have said director should have been was Alexander Payne even nominated? I don't think he
Uh,
was he?
no, he wasn't. No.
Who
So,
would your personal choice have been director? Would
I
it have
mean,
been
I really do think Nolan deserves the award. That's saying I haven't seen Poor Things, but I wouldn't be surprised if Poor Things was, once I see it, one of my favorites of the year. But like, yeah, I think Nolan definitely deserves it. I mean,
it's a bigger, more epic movie. Yeah, I guess I'd go with Nolan. Okay, so then actor, would you say Killian then?
yeah, I think so.
I actually thought you would have said Paul Giamatti. But okay,
Well,
so
yeah, no, yeah, I just think, yeah, I kind of think Divine Joy Randolph will kind of represent the holdovers like
yeah.
that, and I just think I
Well,
think
and
that
but you were
Oppenheimer,
talking about the understatement, so I get that you said Killian.
yeah,
We talked about that, but I for some
yeah.
reason I thought your personal pick would have been you'd been pulling for Giamatti.
No,
Um,
no, no, no. I think his Oppenheimer. I was totally impressed by what he pulled off. I almost felt, almost thought that was more difficult of that acting jobs. So
and then for actress, I said for Emma Stone would be my choice, but I think it's going to be Lily Gladstone.
yeah,
Um, supporting actor, I really want Ryan Gosling to win for Ken. That would be amazing, but I think it's going to be Downey Jr. And it's
yeah,
good too. But if I had my choice, I would have probably put Ryan Gosling, and especially winning for an out and out comedy.
Yeah.
that no one thought would. I mean, when Barbie was first announced, I think people thought it was a joke. So, and
Yeah.
then yeah, supporting actress. I agree with you on that. So, all right, well, so those are the predictions, and I know this was a kind of a different type of year, but I think maybe we're giving people more insight instead of just like regurgitating what all the awards have said, and so uh, I hope more people are watching the Oscars. I know that I feel like people are starting really hating on the Oscars every year,
Yeah.
and it's less and less. But when you've got a year like this where you've had Barbie and Oppenheimer that were extremely popular, and
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling's going to sing, maybe more people will tune in.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think people are more familiar with the movies as a whole. I think Jimmy Kimmel has shown himself to be a good host. I think it will be, and honestly, I think out of the Best Pictures, even nominees, even though I haven't seen all of them, you could easily say that all of these are goodish to great movies.
yeah.
And so it's just like it's kind of a surprisingly like good movie year. And so I think people will tune in.
Do you want to plug
Um,
anything from your podcast, Nathan? Since we didn't do it earlier.
yeah, websites moviesaurelife.com. You could easily find everything there. But yeah, we just a weekly podcast. So anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find us, and we kind of go back and forth between. We've been hitting a 50 best rom-coms list, but then sometimes touching kind of movies that are experiencing anniversaries, milestones, and sometimes some newer movies. So yeah, we have a lot of fun there.
All right, cool. Thanks, Nathan. We'll see you guys
Yeah,
later. Have a good
thanks.
one.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, bye.
Bye.